my online class. I am Begum Sarkar, lecturer in English, Panchrukhi Begum Anowara Degree College. Today I am going to start our English class. My topics will be from Unit 1, Lesson 3. In Lesson 3, there are two important figures. Their name Valentina Tereskova and Kalpana Chawla. Firstly, I am going to start through Valentina Tereskova. She is one of the most important figures in Russia. I am going to discuss her life, his parents. From my discussion, we will able to know his parents' name, his parents, his her birthplace, and her father's and mother's job, and everything details about her. In this unit, you find most important figures in the world. In first lesson, start through the Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. In second lesson, Nelson Mandela. In lesson 3, we find two important figures, Valentina Tereskova and Kalpana Chawla. Both are the cosmonauts. They have done most important things and they have achieved important things for the nation. Valentina Tereskova was born in the village Maslenikovo, Tverskaya district in central Russia. From this line, we came to know the birthplace of Valentina Tereskova. Before starting the line, in headings, Valentina Tereskova, born on 6 March 1937. From the quotation or from the bracket, we came to know birth date of Valentina Tereskova. Firstly, I invite all the students. At first, you should take your textbook and follow my lecture with your textbook. Valentina Tereskova was born on 6 March 1937. This is the birth date of Valentina Tereskova. Valentina Tereskova was born in the village of Maslenikovo. Maslenikovo was the name of the village of Valentina Tereskova. Tverskaya district. The district name of Tverskaya in central Russia. Central Russia means the middle point of Russia, such as central Dhaka, middle point of Dhaka, central America, middle point of America. Like this, central Russia indicates the central or middle point of the Russia. From these lines, we can know some important information about Valentina Tereskova, her birthplace, date of birth, and the district, home district, and the area of Valentina Tereskova. Tereskova's father was a tractor driver and her mother worked in a textile plant. This line indicates us about the work of job of business of Valentina Tereskova. Valentina Tereskova's father was a tractor driver. His father would drive a tractor, and her mother worked in a textile plant. So we came to know about her parents' job, occupation, work. Tereskova born in a normal family, not high society, but her achievement, her struggle, her enthusiasm, and her courage leads him to reach in a special form. She has achieved a great position in Russia through her extraordinary quality. Tereskova began school in 1945 at the age of 8, but left school in 1953 and continued her education through distance learning. Tereskova began her school in 1945 at the age of 8. And but left school in 1953. Tereskova first school life at the age of 8, but she had to leave school formally in 1953. Though she left school in 1953, in her mind had a strong desire for education. She learning. She always participated in learning with distance learning in education. So from this line we came to know her strong attraction for learning, her strong determination for learning. She had about learning, so she continued her learning through distance learning. She acquired her learning, she acquired her education, she participated in education through distance learning. She became interested in parachuting from a young age and trained in skydiving at the local aero club, making her first jump at age 22, only 21 May 1959. From her early age, at the beginning of her age, from her student life, she had a dream of parachuting. In throughout the world, everyone has some dream. Someone may dream to be a doctor, to be an engineer, to be a pilot. On the other hand, Valentina Tereskova had dream to be an astronaut or cosmonaut, and he had became interested in parachuting from her young age and trained in skydiving at a local aero club, making her first jump at 2. From this line, we came to know the interest of Valentina Tereskova. He had interest of parachuting. For parachuting, firstly, she had to exercise in skydiving. Skydiving indicates jump from before opening parachute. Jumping from aircraft before opening parachute. Before finally started parachuting, someone or everyone has to practice again and again in skydiving. So she got the opportunities in local aero club, making her first jump at the age of 22 on 21st May 1969. From this line, we came to know Valentina Tereshkova had started or had skydiving in parachuting after practicing again and again. After practicing again and again, she became expert in skydiving, because we know that have known some information. We got the information about her birth date, parents' job, her village name, district name, and beginning hour of education, and age of education, and she formally left school 1953, and on the other hand, on the contrary, she continued her education through distance learning. At the age of 22, she first jumped in at the local aero club, and this practice led her to become a cosmonaut, to be selected as a cosmonaut. Next portion, after the flight of Yuri Gagarin, the first human being to travel to outer space in 1961, the Soviet Union decided to send a woman in space. After the flight of Yuri Gagarin, the first human being to travel on the outer space in 1969, from this line we came to know some information, general knowledge. Name of the flight, Yuri Gagarin. First human being, the name of flight, the Yuri Gagarin. Time of the flight, 1969. The Soviet Union decided to send a woman in space on 16 February 1962. Proletaria Valentina Tereshkova was selected for this project applicants. Tereshkova had to undergo a series of training that include weightless flights, isolation tests. Have gained some information. Firstly, we know the name of the first human being flight outer space, named Yuri Gagarin. Its age or its time in 1961, and from the success of the Yuri, Soviet Union took decision to send a woman for the most important and historical decision, because the Soviet Union is going to send a woman for outer space. This is a great historical decision for Soviet Union, for utilizing, for completing, for named Ploteria. Tereskova was selected for this project. On 16 February 1962, Valentika was selected for the project. There are more than 400 applicants. Among the 400 applicants, Valentika Tereskova was selected successfully as a cosmonaut for going to outer space. This indicates her enthusiasm, her encouragement, determination, which make her a great cosmonaut throughout the world. As she was selected as a cosmonaut for going to outer space, so she need some testing and some practice, some necessary criteria she had to fulfill, and she had to undergo tested. And after completing the test successfully, she would be sent for outer space. The name of this test is a series of training that included weightless fighting, and isolation test, weightless flight, ozoon hand, isolation physical test, centrifuge test, rocket spacecraft engineering, and 120 parachute jump. She had to practice 120 times parachute jumping. Pilot training in MiG-15 UTI jet fighters, and she had to training in pilot training. Since the successful launch of spacecraft Vostok 5 on 14 June 1963, Tereskova began preparing for her own flight. As the Vostok 5 had successfully launched on 14 June in 1963, Tereskova began preparing for her own flight. After the successful launch of Vostok 5, Tereskova had to prepare herself for her own flight. On morning 16 June 1963, Tereskova and her backup cosmonaut Solovyova were dressed in spacesuits and taken to the space shuttle launch pad by a bus. On the morning 16 June 1963, Tereskova and her companion were taken to the space shuttle and launch pad by bus. After completing her communication and life support check, she was sealed inside Vostok 6. After completing her communication and life support check, communication indicates the communication with her and the management, and life support and the system of life support indicates management of oxygen and any other trains, included all the things which included for life support. She was sealed inside Vostok 6, finishing a 2 hours countdown countdown, Vostok 6 launched faultlessly. After finishing 2 hours countdown, Vostok 6 faultlessly launched. From our discussion, we came to know some information about Valentika Tereskova. From this information, there may appear rearrange, vocabulary test, with clue without clue, summarizing, flowchart, multiple choice, and question mark. So, firstly, I advise the student to learn multiple choice and answering question from Valentika Tereskova, and make a flowchart about Valentika Tereskova, mentioning her life and activities. Although Tereskova experienced nausea and physical discomfort for much of the flight, she orbited the Earth 48 times and spent almost 3 days in space. Firstly, Tereskova felt discomfort in Vostok 6 and physical discomfort. She orbited Earth 48 times. She round throughout Earth 48 times, and she spent 3 days in space. 3 days in space. 3 days in space. With a single flight, she more flight time than the combined times of all American astronauts who had flown before the date. With a single flight, she logged more flight time than the combined times of all American astronauts who had flown before the date. She is the only person who spent more time in space than all the American cosmonauts combinedly spent the time. Tereskova also maintained a flight log and took photographs of the horizon, which are later used to identify aerosol layer within the atmosphere. Tereskova maintained all the system of a flight log and took photographs of the horizon, which were used in later for various purposes and specially to identify aerosol layers with the atmosphere. Vostok 6 was the final Vostok flight and was launched 2 days after Vostok 5, which carried Valery of Begum into a similar orbit for 5 days. After Tereskova, the two vessels approached each other within 5 kilometers at one point, and for space, Tereskova communicated with Begum sky and the Soviet leaders. We are going to discuss about Tereskova's life, and from our discussion we will be able to answering question, learning rearrange, and firstly all of the students should learn the word meaning and synonym, antonyms, and every other thing. So firstly I give some homework for the student. They practice vocabulary test, with test, and answering question and flowchart. This is a style of flowchart. Student will try to answer and they will send answer through SMS and email or Facebook or Messenger. And for the second year student, they will study the passage from test paper and they will answer in various ways. Okay, assalamu alaikum my dear student.